All right, good evening. Now I'd like to bring the regular evening meeting of the Township of Langley Council to order. And the first item is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. Before I take a motion, because we have some delegations and a very busy meeting, and there's a lot of people that are interested, I think, in some of these issues, I will ask that we vary the agenda to allow from item J to N to be heard or dealt with after the delegations. So J through N. So that takes us through the, let's make sure everybody's clear. N is other business, and J is the items from prior meeting, and we'll throw in the mayor's report in there too, so then we'll put that after the delegations. With that change, I'll ask for a motion from council. Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Kunst. Discussion, a show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed and carries unanimously. And I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular evening meeting of July 8th and the public hearing meeting of July 8th. Councillor Whitmarsh, second. Councillor Arneson, any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. We have... where's Ms. Bauer? I neglected to mention in the agenda that D1 has been withdrawn. Does that need to be an amendment or just?
Yes, it actually does need to be an amendment.
Oh, okay.
But it was scheduled for September.
Yes. Okay. So if I could just have a motion to amend the agenda that D1 has been withdrawn in this meeting and scheduled for September. The next meeting in September.
I want to speak to that then.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson moves it, and seconder is Councillor Kunz. Councillor Woodward, just on that change.
Question to the staff, Ms. Bauer. It's important to note that we deferred that September, but subject to further council consideration. If you could make sure that's clear. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Okay, just a show of hands. All those in favor of that amendment? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. So we have one delegation, Cheryl Weens, the BC Greens of Langley. Please come forward. And you have 5 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Oh, sorry, I was getting your mic on. Okay, there you go. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak with you on the topic of carbon budgets this evening. My name is Cheryl Weens. I'm a township resident, and though I am also the communications coordinator for the BC Greens of Langley, I would like to point out that the climate crisis is a non-partisan issue, and it will require all of us working together to adequately address it. As you know, the burning of fossil fuels puts carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, which causes warming. At a certain point, atmospheric carbon concentrations will reach a threshold, causing global temperatures to rise to dangerous levels. Recent science makes it clear that if the global community continues emitting carbon into the atmosphere at current rates, we will likely exceed the safety limit sometime in the 2030s or perhaps the 2040s. In October of 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a landmark report. The report made it clear that to stay below the safety limit, we need to reduce emissions to 45% below 2010 levels by 2030 and reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. These targets are critically important because they enable governments all over the world to develop carbon budgets designed to keep us below the safety limit. So what is a carbon budget? Well, a carbon budget in many ways is analogous to a financial budget. Using this analogy, one could say that we have been overspending carbon for decades, which is risking a collapse for which there is no bailout. It's therefore critical that we inventory our carbon spending to determine where our emissions are coming from, and then determine the actions necessary to nearly halve our overspending by 2030 and balance the budget by 2050. And just like in the financial world, regular reporting of the carbon budget financial statements will be critically important for transparency, accountability, and informed decision-making. In January, Vancouver City Council passed a motion to declare a climate emergency and tasked staff with developing a carbon budget in line with IPCC recommendations. Staff determined that the City of Vancouver as a community emits nearly 3 megatons of CO2 every year, and that number needs to drop by about 92,000 tons every year from now until 2030 to meet the first IPCC target. Some initiatives that would achieve this annual reduction goal are switching 15% of vehicle trips to active transportation and transit, replacing 35,000 gasoline cars with electric cars, replacing 22,000 furnaces with heat pumps, and switching the downtown district energy system to renewable energy. Now, you might be wondering how we're going to pay for this, and that would be a fair question. One to which I would answer, we are going to pay one way or another. For example, we know the climate crisis comes with increased risk of extreme weather events. And we know from recent experience that these extreme weather events can be very costly. For example, $360,000 in December of 2017 and $250,000 in December of 2018. Furthermore, the initiatives we undertake to reduce emissions will have a significant return on investment due to lower energy costs and other community benefits. For example, reduced congestion, improved air quality, and improved health outcomes, just to name a few. You may also be interested to know that in addition to the City of Vancouver, 6 other municipalities in the Lower Mainland have already declared a climate emergency and adopted IPCC targets. Furthermore, the Metro Vancouver Regional District is now set to adopt the IPCC targets as recommended to the board by their Climate Action Committee just a week or 2 ago. All of this should make it clear to us that the climate crisis is not something we can put off into the future. It is here and now. We face an existential threat of our own making, and I think you'll agree that acting is a moral imperative. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay.
Questions?
There are no questions.
No
Thank you.
questions?
I
Okay.
appreciate your presentation. Thank you. And we're going to jump to that decision fairly quickly. So we are now jumping to J, items from prior meetings, and Councillor Arneson has requested following motion to be brought back for reconsideration. Councillor Arneson, you're on the floor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much. I do appreciate the opportunity to bring the motion back for reconsideration. In the interest of time, I don't think I'm going to reread it. It's
So you just need, first of all, you just need to move reconsideration.
Oh,
And then
sorry.
We do it.
I'm
That's okay.
stepping ahead of
We do it
myself.
in two
I'd like to
stages.
move reconsideration.
Is there a second by Councillor Richter? Any discussion on the reconsideration? Seeing none, I'll call the question on reconsideration. It carries unanimously.
My
Okay,
copious notes.
Yeah, that's right. You don't need them. So now we're on to the motion, and Councillor Arneson, I know you need to move it.
Yeah.
And just so you know, I'm going to ask that we divide the first paragraph and the balance of the paragraphs. If you want to move it that way, or I'm going to ask for division. Just want to give you a heads up. So you have the floor.
Well, maybe you should just lead the division conversation.
Sure, I'll let you move it first then, if you want to put it on the table.
So I'm going to move the motion.
Okay. Ms. Bauer, it needs to be moved and seconded, right? Yes, so it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Richter seconds it. And I don't want to interrupt, and if you want to speak to it first, and then
Okay.
I'll give my reasons for.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Council for being supportive of the reconsideration and this opportunity to speak to this very critical piece of policy that we are working on. First of all, I would like to say I think it's really important to consider some of the intervening things that have happened since April when we first considered this. And I know it is a bit overwhelming and somewhat novel at this point to consider what is a carbon budget. I think many local governments are looking into this, and as we know, there are some that have adopted this. So I think it's important for us to consider what it is that we are currently able to do towards our policy momentum towards accelerating climate action change. I would like to comment and say part of my own due diligence is sitting on the Climate Action Committee, and one of the things that we did is to put forward a carbon neutrality position for 2050. So I think it's important to recognize that local governments do play a large role in the overall implications of global climate change, and many of the things that we do are going to be impactful. So anything that we can do is obviously very important. I think for me, the primary reason why I wanted to move forward and have a climate budget is that in the Township of Langley, we have many initiatives that have already been started by staff, but I think it's important that we have to recognize that in order to change this trajectory that we have created, we need to take very definitive and very aggressive action towards our carbon outcomes. So this is a host of things, carbon sinks, the built environment, transportation, etc. A number of communities, as been pointed out in the delegation, are leading the way in this area. I just wanted to comment that I do think staff have done a great job. We already have had a public forum in looking into this. But from my perspective, I think the disconnect is the fact that we need political direction to move this forward. And I know that staff is working on implementing some plans starting in September, but I think that we need to give them a strong signal from their political counterparts to know that this is what we want to do. And waiting until there's further information about a carbon budget, the problem with doing that is when I talk to other communities, some of them who are a little advanced have already made they've availed themselves, of federal funding that's available to them. And the only reason they can get climate action funding is because they have projects on the go that they're working on. So this is stable, reliable funding that they can draw upon for projects that I think that the Township of Langley would find to be very worthy as well. So I would just urge Council to support this motion so we can take advantage of these funds and that we move as soon as possible with strong political direction and get underway immediately for this climate action policy to move forward more expeditiously.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Well, Your Worship, I was going to maybe move to where you were, because I'm sure now that we're considering reconsideration, it wasn't that we weren't in agreement, I don't believe, with the meeting I was at. In fact, Council was very much in favor of all the details in it, but they were so detailed that we felt it was prudent to refer it to a CPC meeting in September. So I still would like to see that, but maybe what I'm hearing from Councillor Arneson is that we should certainly pass and adopt the first part of the motion. So would this be an appropriate time to move
Sure.
that?
So if I move division, and that would be the first paragraph divided from the balance of the motion. So
and the balance would be still referred to the workshop.
That would be a secondary
all
motion.
Look forward to.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So do I need a motion for division? So Councillor Long moves it. Is there a seconder to division? Councillor Kunst, I'll just do a show of hands. All those in favor of division? Anybody opposed? Okay, it carries. So on the first paragraph, I don't think there's anybody around that disagrees with that. The climate is changing. It's out there. Like I think Councillor Arneson had a great conversation the other day, and I said, well, the bullets are flying. We all know it, and so I don't think, I think it's, and we all agree we do need to look into this. So I'm supportive of passing the first part of the motion, and then I'll get into the second part where I think that needs to be referred so we can all get on the same page as Councillor Arneson and get the information and knowledge and work with our staff. But at this point, I'm going to call the question on the first part. That's J1. That carries unanimously. And on the second part, I think Councillor Long, did you wish to refer all of the second part to the CPC meeting? I believe it's a future CPC, but I believe we were looking at September, weren't we, Ms. Bauer?
The date of September 30th.
I believe this was to come back as part of the council priorities workshop.
Yes, it was. The workshop, yes. So, and that was the date picked for September 30th? Or,
No, I believe it was October.
October, okay.
4th.
So in the fall.
Yeah.
So it would be a council priority workshop in the fall. So Councillor Long, Councillor Long?
What I have here is the motion was referred to September 30th Council Strategic Priority Workshop.
Okay.
It was a council
that's right.
strategic priorities workshop.
Yeah. Yeah, but we could also separate it off from that too. I think if we just said in the fall, and in case there's a change in dates, we can make sure it gets on our docket. So would you be okay with that, Councillor Long?
Well, I'm just helping you out. So
Well, I want to
whatever
make sure that,
however you, I mean,
we have to
not
make sure we
helping
deal
out.
with this in the fall, but if we set a date.
Maybe I'll leave it to Councillor
It may be an
Anderson
issue
to-
that if
to
that
make-
date doesn't happen. Has that date been confirmed, Ms. Bauer?
I believe the 30th was changed to the 4th, and that's
why
why
I'm
confusion, yeah.
concerned. So
Yeah.
if we could just say the fall, that gives staff a little bit of leeway. I think they understand we want to deal with this as quickly as
In a
possible.
timely manner.
Okay, so Councillor Long moves it. Is there a seconder to the referral? Oh, Councillor Kuhn's second referral. Okay, so Councillor, I'm just going to open this up. So, okay, if you don't push the button again for on referral.
Yeah, so
You're-
my mic's on.
Yeah, okay.
Is
Okay.
it okay?
Yeah, I guess so.
Did you want me to talk or?
No, go ahead. Sure.
Okay,
Here you are.
thanks.
Yeah, I just trying to manage the list here.
I just want to make clear, if we're referring it to a fall CPC meeting as opposed to the Gord McIntosh session,
Ms. Bauer.
at that meeting, will staff be coming back with a draft carbon budget, a report on real-time policy decisions, a presentation, as well as best practices actions? Or are we just referring these for debate at the CPC?
Mr. Backen, I think general practice has been that staff come back with information to help council discuss this and give us some background. Is that?
We have to go back to first principles, Your
Yeah.
Worship. So is the deferral to the McIntosh session or not?
Okay. To the mover. That was the last meeting we did to the McIntosh session. So
It impacts what we come back with.
that's right. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, thank you, Your
Always
Worship. My original intention was to have it come to a CP meeting, which is separate and apart from those, because my consideration is once we've said that there is a climate emergency, then it should take precedence rather than being debated as something that may or may not be shifted in terms of our priorities. So what I anticipated was that staff over the course of summer, who's already working on these initiatives, would be able to come back early in the fall, but that it would be a standalone conversation with staff input on the subject.
So let's clarify. Council Long moved the referral to a CPC meeting so we can have a workshop in the fall. CPC in the fall.
So it could be, yes, that's fine, Your Worship, except we do have an ongoing topic we've been working on for some time, so we're taking it would be after that in the sequencing.
It may be,
Okay.
or
So with the
manage.
target date of the fall, the question then is, the motion itself then is a referral of the four elements. So if it's being referred, then we need to know what it's being referred for. So if it's referred for information, that makes sense, or if it's simply a referral, effectively a
refer for
deferral.
information.
But what information does council then seek? Because if it's referred for our information or council's information?
Council's information. If staff could, at the CPC meeting, as they have in the past, provide us a presentation on what they're doing, what their plans are, and then council can then give further directions they need.
So it'll be a referral to staff to provide a presentation of their current activities at the CPC meeting sometime in later 2020, 2019.
And take, and take into account the points in this motion.
Okay.
Thank you. That's okay? Everybody's happy with that one? Okay, good. As long as we all get on the same page. Councillor Richter on the referral.
Okay, so again, I want to clarify, in the fall, when we're discussing this, will staff be presenting a draft carbon budget for us to look at?
And not from what I understand, we're to do a presentation on staff's current activities and work, so council can actually then deliberate on these motions based on the work that staff has undertaken to date.
And then provide further direction. I think that's what we need to. I see it. We all need to get on the same page and find out where we are at and we're doing. And then I think this part about the carbon budget, we need to deal with that. But I think the starting point is a CPC meeting where we get that information from staff, deliberate on it, and then provide some direction. I think that by that time, Metro Vancouver may also have. I believe it's coming to the next board meeting. So once it's gone through the board meeting, I think Metro Vancouver will have some information that will help assist our staff also and help assist our deliberations. So I think it's timely to look at it in the fall.
Okay, so through you to Councillor Arneson, is that what you wanted to have happen?
Okay, sometimes I realize that we have to be incremental in our approach, and I do take the position that it's important for all of council to be mentally at the same place. So that's good. So we're all acknowledging that we have a climate emergency. That's step number one. Step number two, I was very, very happy to see what staff is doing at our senior levels to implement what it is in effect a carbon budget. If it's not exactly that yet, what it is the formation of the information that will lead to a carbon budget. So that, I think, is going to be helpful. What I wanted most of all is to assure the public that we are moving forward with what is deemed to be best practices in terms of addressing our climate change through mitigation and adaptation. And I think in the absence of that information, it makes our concern even more worrying that we are not aware necessarily of what's going on. But I just would like to say, I think that from my perception, having met with staff, they're very much on board. They're very interested and very proactive in doing this work. And I think that if we meet early in the fall with this as the guidelines and the bedrock for where we're going with this, that I would be satisfied.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to comment to the council, and I wanted to ask a question of staff, is this particular building was built as a silver green lead building, if I may, through the chair to either Mr. Backen or Mr. Savey. How long have we been doing this particular project? Is it 10 years old now, this building, if I may?
That's correct, Your Worship, and it is 10 years old now.
And
Actually, a
we've
bit more.
got, is it green energy and green survival, water reduction and a number of initiatives right in the building, if I may?
That's correct. It's LEED Silver is what I can recall from that era, and it's has many of those improvements.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so now I'm going to call the question on the referral to the second part. Carries unanimously. Okay, we're moving on. I'm going to do the mayor's report. See if staff get ready on the. I know we moved it up. We moved J to N up. Yeah, I snuck it in. I snuck the mayor's report in early, and they didn't even notice. I like that. You guys are in for a treat. Well, good evening, everyone. And it's a short report today, but several events were attended by myself and members of council the past couple of weeks, included the 107th annual Aldergrove Fair Days, which took place over the weekend. Councillor Kuntz showed off her skills in the fast draw competition. Where are you? Did you win the trophy? No. Oh, okay. Next time. And along with Councillor Long, they participated in the tractor pull. Who won the tractor pull?
Well, it was
kind of a tie. Kind of a tie? Okay. I don't know how you pull a tractor. Acting Mayor Long provided a welcome at the opening ceremonies, and Councillors Richter and Whitmarsh were also in attendance. Councillor Kuntz and myself had the privilege of being judges for the chili cook-off, with the win going to Brick Alley Bistro, and the weather was amazing. The fair was well attended, and everyone had a great time in it. I understand Loverboy on Saturday night was a hit. The place was packed. Yeah. Thank you. And Councillor Long, along with the committee, put in countless hours and has a sunburn to prove it. So thank you. Acting Mayor Long played a huge part, and here it says that in the Aldergrove Fair Days, and we want to thank him and the volunteers. It was a successful event.
It was really the volunteers that did it.
Oh, I know. You're running around pretty hard, I saw. Township Council participated in the first community-to-community forum with the Kwantlen First Nation on July 10th. This was a great opportunity for us to work towards our common goals with the Kwantlen leaders. On July 18th, I attended what has now become an annual tradition to welcome new physicians to Langley. The welcome and dinner took place at the Interpretive Center at the Derek AA Arboretum. And I'd just like to report from the Langley Family Practice Association that we've had 9 retirements of doctors, but we have 7 doctors taking new patients in Langley, and Abbotsford, it's a 2-year wait. So they've done some great work in Langley. I'm really proud of what Langley Family Practice and our physicians in Langley have done to kind of turn around what was looking like it would be quite a challenge, and now we have doctors in place. Very important for our community. On Sunday, July 21st, was the annual charity car wash hosted by the volunteer cancer drivers. This annual event provides much needed funding for the volunteers who drive patients to the treatments. Yesterday, every dollar donated will be matched, with all proceeds going to the Volunteer Cancer Drivers Society, and I was able to get my car nice and sparkling clean there and supported them. On council, Councillor Kuntz and Councillor Davis attended Bard in the Valley, a Midsummer Night's Dream on July 13th. Councillor Kuntz also attended the 2019 Intermediate Canadian Baseball Championships on July 20th. Councillor Whitmarsh attended the National Men's Gymnastics Competition at the Langley Event Centre on July 19th and the Grand Fondo Events Awards Ceremony in Fort Langley on July 20th. Councillor Richter attended the Girls Under 14B Provincial Softball Championships at North Knollbooth Park on July 12th. She also attended responding to overdose in Langley on July 16th. And Councillor Ferguson met with and meeting with the Federal Minister Tassi regarding seniors issues. Upcoming events, there's the Langley Good Times Cruising in Aldergrove on Saturday, September the 7th. And as this is our last meeting before the break, what was that? Next council meeting will be on Monday, September the 9th. So with that, if council has anything to add, we'll move on to other business. Okay, thank you. So other business, I'm just going to clear the queue here. And we have Councillor Woodward to notice the motion. Yeah. Everyone, to Councillor Woodward,
yeah.
N1.
Caught me off guard there. Okay, so item N1, I'm not going to read the motion. I'm not going to read any of it based on some of the discussions earlier today as well. Assuming council's read it. This is in regards to our budget funding of up to four, potentially more funding permits, adding some traffic calming measures to existing school site locations as ranked by staff and priority. I did follow up on that and found out that the current council policy for neighborhood traffic calming presents a bit of a challenge for school sites, whereas in new school site construction, traffic calming is going in, but for existing school sites, it's not. So this, working with staff a little bit and looking at some options on revising that policy to allow the funded traffic calming measures to go ahead for existing school site sections. So hopefully this year, I'd like to move that motion starting at therefore, Mr. Mayor.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Richter. I have a question. Okay. Section 4.3.3 and 4.3.4, does that relate to the 67%?
Yes, it does.
Okay, because I see that as a good thing. I think schools should be exempt from that. Other than that, it looks to me, we do put schools as a priority, I understand, and it's based on budget, so I certainly think that's fine, but I like that idea. So any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question on N1. Carries unanimously. And Councillor Woodward, you're still on for N2.
Yeah, do N2. This is following up on the last meeting where council received the report from staff regarding reviewing the memo I sent regarding a possible amenity structure for the upsizing or widening of arterial roads within the Willoughby neighborhood plan, the Willoughby community plan. And reading that report and having sitting on it for a couple of weeks here between council meetings, came up with this notice of motion, again in consultation with staff and some of the council comments at the time, which was to actually draft a document for us to review. As recommended by staff, also begin that engagement with the community at large and the development community. But considering some of the other council commentary, removing some of the sections as listed there, to lower that per acre amenity fee that's outlined within the proposed policy, and really focusing down on 202A and 80th Avenue as the core item in that section of Willoughby, and then 208th Street between 76 and 67, 66, and removing these sections for now to get that per amenity fee down, and specifically removing the sections from the Willoughby neighborhood plan as well. So
okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Richter seconds.
I've already spoken to him.
Yeah, okay.
Notice how I'm switching my speaking to it prior to moving now?
Amazing, yeah. I'm going to support this because I do want to hear from the development community, and I see that public engagement is part of it before it comes back to us, so I certainly want to support this stage and then hear from them and go from there. So, Councillor Ferguson?
Well, I think I did want to comment that during the last particular meeting and the other report, I had actually sent Councillor Woodward a number of thoughts, and I appreciate what he's put on from A to D. Some of these particular roads I discussed with him and sent it in a memo. I appreciate him taking it into consideration because it does make a difference as far as our funding envelope and our moving forward in the future. So I'm glad we're moving along with this, and I think it's I'm going to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question on. That was N2. Carries unanimously. Is there any other business? Okay, so we'll move on to back to our agenda as it was. Bylaws for first and second reading. We have F1, rezoning application number 100555 and development permit application number 101052. This is Shen Feng and bylaw number 5495. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Long, second. Any seconder? Councillor Whitmarsh, discussion on F1. Seeing none, I'll call it. Oh.
Your Worship, I'm a bit slow.
Okay, Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship. I'm wondering if we could find out through staff. So these units, do we know if they're going to be rental or condominium units at this time?
We don't know, Your Worship.
Okay, thanks.
All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question on F1. Carries with Councillor Davis opposed. Move on to F2, and this is zoning bylaw 2019-2019 update, bylaw number 5490. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, second. Councillor Davis. Discussion, Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this to you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to declare a conflict of interest on item F2.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll wait. Is there any discussion on F2? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on F2. Oh, hang on, I got to do this all over again. Attendance, just hold on, mark absent. No, I'm going to do it again. Okay, F2, I'm calling the question now, the vote. And it carries unanimously. And move, if we can. Yeah, we'll just wait for Councillor Woodward. All right, moving on to F3. This is official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 100160 and development permit application numbers 100971, 101091, and 101092. Mitchell Latimer, 8197 Incorporated, bylaw 5491 and bylaw 5492. Councillor Ferguson moves it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arneson, Councillor Richter, discussion?
Yes, through you to staff on page 18. Of the report, it says there's 129 significant trees, but it's not clear, or at least it doesn't seem clear to me, how many are going to be retained, because they're talking about greenway areas and everything. So if I'm reading this, it looks like of the 129, only 5 trees are proposed for retention. Is that the correct answer in this?
Mr. Seffi.
That is correct, Your Worship. I will just add that there is a portion of the site that is subject to a future development permit application, and that is the duplex site, as I show on the plan with the cursor. That will be subject to a future development permit application by council. So there may be more opportunities for some retention at that time.
Okay, well, if we're serious about climate action, we got to stop cutting down so many trees.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to call the question on F3. After that round of applause for me. Carries with Councillor Richter and Councillor Woodward opposed. And we move on to F4, Heritage Revitalization Agreement, application number 100574, the rezoned residence, and that's Mitchell Latimer 80 Inc. And West Bylaw 5493. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Long, second by Councillor Davis. Discussion on F4. Seeing none, I'll call the question on F4. And that carries unanimously. We now move on to bylaws for first, second, and third reading. And G1 is the Cannabis Production Farm Bylaw, Bylaw 5496, 5497, and 5498. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Kunst and a seconder. I need a seconder. Councillor Whitmarsh. Councillor Kunst, who speaks to it?
Oh, yeah, really happy to see this on the agenda tonight, and I'd like to thank staff for getting it to this stage. A couple of questions regarding the bylaw, and one is about noise. So some of the complaints about South Eldergrove's canopy are in relation to noise from generators, traffic, and ventilation equipment. I was wondering if there's some way we could address that in the bylaw?
Sefi?
Thank you, Your Worship. The bylaw that is in draft form in front of the council for consideration of the initial readings is one that staff has been working on closely with the Ministry of Agriculture. As council is aware, because of the fact that the Township of Langley is a regulated municipality, one of 4 in the province, any bylaws affecting ALR must be approved by the minister. So prior to presenting this for council's consideration, staff has had extensive discussions with the ministry staff to reach a level of understanding that at least we will have staff support from the ministry's perspective. So with that as background, I guess I will just add that generally speaking, noise is considered to be a nuisance. And as long as a farmer or a farm operation is considered by the province to be normal farm practice or undertaking farm operations based on normal farm practices, noise is just considered to be a nuisance that has to be accepted by those around the subject farm. That said, there are, I guess, recourses for those who feel that the noise is, I guess, beyond normal, and that is what is known as the Farm Industry Review Board process, where a farmer or a resident in the ALR is able to make a submission to the FIRB, FIRB for short, to, I guess, make a case as to the level of noise that's being generated. So having said that, if council wishes to make an amendment to I guess add noise, it is not one that is recommended by staff, as I said again, because of the fact that it may in fact tip the balance of support versus non-support by the ministry staff. It can certainly be something that could be added.
So, yeah, I wouldn't want to jeopardize the bylaw, but what would be the recommendation from staff that we don't include that noise bylaw? Do you think it's sufficient?
Your Worship, it's really a matter of risk. I guess I would just preface it by saying we're not certain that even with ministry staff support that this will be successful given the approach being taken. We're not saying it'll be unsuccessful. We just simply don't know. It's a bit of a vacuum. I think Mr. Sefi does have a suggested resolution or a suggested amendment if there is a desire to have some of noise included. Mr. Sefi?
That's correct, Your Worship. If council wish to include consideration about noise, the suggestion would be to look at, allow me while I refer to the appropriate page number, page G1, Your Worship, in terms of the management plans related to air quality, stormwater, and wastewater. That is the one but last bullet on the executive summary. We could add acoustic qualified professionals to also provide recommendations as part of the management plan. So that could be something that council could ask staff to include.
Wish to make that recommendation?
Yes, I do.
I will second that.
Okay, moved by Councillor Kuhn, second by Councillor Richter. Discussion on that recommendation, Councillor Richter.
Well, as we've been told by staff, there's no guarantees that this bylaw will even be accepted by the ministry, but the public has been very clear that they want those protections in place if as a way to regulate this industry. So I'm thanking Councillor Kuntz for raising it and very happy to support her amendment.
Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would echo those comments. I think that one of the things I've been hearing from South Langley is that the noise pollution is just on par with some of the other issues in terms of things like odor management. So can I just ask a question through Your Worship to staff? Would it be the case if the farm bylaw went forward and they found that to be going a little above and beyond, that they could just strike that part out and the rest of the bylaw, the draft bylaw, would stand?
I believe that the bylaw would be turned down, and then we would have the opportunity to change it and send it back again. Is that correct, Mr. Backen?
That'd be my understanding, Your Worship, that they would actually provide us with rationale for the rejection, and then we could actually review that rationale and then prepare a bylaw that would be acceptable.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to comment also that, if we're looking at this bylaw, being a regulated community, similar, I believe, to Delta, and I believe Abbotsford's not, or is it a regulated community, if I may through a chair?
Yes, it is, Your Worship.
Okay, but not Chilliwack. So unlike Chilliwack, where they can make their own kind of rules regarding the agriculture community, we're bound by this regulated community. The key things come up, that's been mentioned already, noise and, of course, acoustics of noise, and, of course, odor, which is always a concern. The thing is, new operations coming on stream, as you know, we're almost a year into the new federal regulations regarding cannabis. If I may, my question is the key things when you're building one of these greenhouse or new structures is the soil base compared to, say, a concrete or a firm base of some sort. That comes up in the discussions when you're meeting individuals wishing to put up a building of some sort. Is that not the case, if I may?
Mr. Sevi?
That's correct, Your Worship. That is, in fact, the current provincial regulation, which this bylaw, should it be adopted, will actually endeavor to mirror. So we don't want to leave any ambiguity. We are, because of the fact that we will have our own farm bylaw made in Langley, if you will, it needs to ensure that those same provincial regulations are included in our bylaw as well, and that will be the third bullet on the same page I referenced earlier.
That's correct. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the key thing is, as the Council Rector and others have said, it's loud and clear, the concerns made by neighbors and residents of the community. We want to make sure that we can continue having strong bylaws approved by the province that will protect the citizens and the very challenges that exist thereof. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whitmarsh?
Yeah, thank you. In page 5 of the package here, there's a section on location. And I noticed just in the paragraph at the bottom of that section that it talks about Metro Vancouver proceeding with a proposal to restrict cannabis production. And it talks about 200 meters away, and it gives some examples of places that it should be at least 200 meters away. And one of them is 200 meters away from residential use or land zoned for residential use. And yet in our locations above...
Just hold on. We're on the amendment, aren't we? Yeah, so we're speaking to the amendment. I'm sorry. I just was looking at 5 things here at once.
I'll come back to that.
Okay, so on the amendment. Okay. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I certainly support the 200 meters as well. Could I have the noise amendment motion read back one more time, please?
So, Your Worship, it's essentially that Council will give the bylaw 3 readings, subject to staff incorporating amendments to ensure that a qualified professional is involved in the management of noise and provides an appropriate report to address noise issues as part of the process.
Can you just give me a concept again, Mr. Back? What do you think, just gut, the increased risk is of adding this to the bylaw as opposed to something maybe more specific, like not allowing any generators to power lights to grow cannabis?
I guess the best way to view it is the risk would be the time frame from the rejection of the noise provision to the introduction of a subsequent bylaw that met the requirements. I would expect that the ministry would probably try to move very quickly on this, but that's probably still a 6 to 9 month period on the bylaw as it is. If there was a rejection at that point for only the noise reason, we could probably turn that around in 60 days or so.
That's correct, Your Worship. If I could just interject, we have had, as I said earlier, discussions with the ministry staff who have assured us to the degree that they can that this will be expedited, and they've given us a 1 to 2 month process based on the current draft.
Yeah, so there's minimal risk here in terms of that. We can communicate that the noise issue is an issue for them in approving the bylaw. We're not starting another 6 to 9 month process. We're going to have that feedback loop, and it's not going to hold it up.
That would be correct. Just a caution would be that's ministry staff processing it up to the decision makers. That process has a life of its own.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Richter?
Yeah, well, I wanted to pick up on Councillor Woodward's question. I thought the motion was to amend the bylaw to add noise protections. That's what I thought I seconded.
It is, but it's a little bit more specific than that.
Well, I want to make sure that it's to amend the bylaw to add noise protections.
As I understand, that's what it is. But it's okay. Any other questions? I have a question of clarification. So this bylaw will affect those new operations coming in, or is it going to be retroactive on to existing? And will it be following, with these amendments? I guess the minister has to approve it, but basically we're following Fire Ministry Review Board and legislation on this. So I just want to clarify that the township isn't trying to go above and beyond the Fire Ministry Review Board.
Your Worship, I guess a couple of other points that I should have mentioned earlier. One is in terms of noise in particular, beyond the setback requirements that were referenced by Councillor Whitmarsh earlier, that are in the bylaw. There's also a requirement for buffering, which is one of the purposes of which is to ensure that noise is mitigated to the degree possible. So, just for council's peace of mind, there are provisions already included. As far as I guess the timing is concerned, there are some risks in terms of delaying the adoption of the process or the adoption of the bylaw, in that applications that have not been submitted may come in and will have to be processed based on the existing regime without the benefit of a regulatory bylaw.
Okay, so this applies to new applications.
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, so on the amendment, I see no further discussion. I'll call a question. Carries unanimously. So we're back to the main motion as amended. I have a speakers list here. Councillor Richter.
I'm good.
Okay, Councillor Woodward.
I'll defer to Councillor Whitmore since he raised it first. I was going to raise the same thing and amend it, or at least ask the staff. With the note in there about the Metro Vancouver process, why would we choose the 100 meters over the 200 meters that Metro Vancouver may already be pursuing? Was there some logic to choosing the 100?
Mr. Sevi?
Again, Your Worship, this is based on discussions with ministry staff. Metro Vancouver is in early stages, as the staff report states. It is a desire that may or may not happen. It has to go through an extensive process of consultation, and if council wish to amend the current bylaw to increase the offset or the setback, certainly that's something that we could do. Again, it's balancing the needs and the perspectives and what might be adopted or approved by the minister.
And Your Worship, just to add to that, we're not aware of the dialogue going on between Metro Vancouver and the ministry, because they too are subject to the same legislative scheme. We can only report back in terms of what the staff have advised us in terms of what would be the best chance of success, with the emphasis on their estimation as opposed to, I guess, a guarantee. So we are trying to mirror that as quickly, as reasonably as we can, hence the limitation that you referenced.
Maybe this is too detailed a question, but can you let me know how many applications for this do we have within 100 meters of the urban boundary? Do we have any?
We are aware of 3, Your Worship. And just one more point in terms of the Metro Vancouver process. If the the 200-meter setback requirements are actually approved, the Township of Langley's bylaw could, in theory, be a matter of formality to be amended, subject to council's approval, of course. But there will no longer be an objection from the ministry for us to amend our bylaw to mirror the Metro Vancouver bylaw, if in fact that's something that the region moves towards as a future date.
All right, thanks. I think I won't be moving that amendment. Thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Whitmarsh?
Yeah, I guess my question around that was, would there be any strength in and support for what Metro Vancouver is considering if we had 200 meters as our setback as well, so that it would demonstrate that we're on the same page thinking around how close these are to residential uses? Would there be any advantage to us in helping maybe strengthen the case that Metro Vancouver will be bringing forward?
Mr. Mack?
If we are trying to effectively lobby the present position, assuming it is a position as opposed to an opinion of the ministry staff, that might be an approach. That approach, however, would take a more protracted period of time, and you would then see the risk of the balance of the bylaw not being put into implementation. So I think a better approach would probably be to adopt what we think we can have success with, and then come back with future amendments, which would also have to go through the same process, but after having some feedback from what other communities are doing and how they've fared.
Okay, so yeah, that's helpful. So the currently it states 100 meters from the urban ALR boundary. Is that fully encompassing of what is meant by residential use, or would there be examples of residential use that are not covered by the urban ALR boundary definition?
Your Worship, it's a complicated question because we have residential use, we have residential zone, and then of course we have the boundaries. So perhaps I can just use this opportunity to show a bit of a map that staff has put together, if I can just quickly find it, that shows so, Your Worship, if you can take a look at the colored areas, the white areas not being ALR, those whited out is outside of the ALR, so not subject to the farm bylaw. And then if you look at the rest of it, the green areas are the only areas based on the current setback provisions in the draft bylaw that one could potentially establish a cannabis grow operation in. So all of the red areas would be excluded.
Wow, a lot of areas where they... Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Well, I just wanted to say that it looks very clear that there would be a Me Too clause for us. Certainly, we're part of Metro Vancouver, so if Metro Vancouver is successful in increasing the boundary, then we will also increase ours. But I think what we're hearing here very clearly is we want to make sure we get something in very quickly. So the sooner we get something in, the better it's going to be for everybody. And as it improves, hopefully improves for the whole region, we'll also be on that on the Me Too clauses for it may be even other things. But currently, we already have a 200-meter setback for almost everything except residential uses, right? So, I mean, I would be in favor of what we have here and keeping a close eye on what Metro's up to and make sure we're on the same bandwagon.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with the how many meters. But I have a question about, we require a petition for soil deposit because it impacts area residents, but we don't require one for grow up. Can you tell me if there is a difference?
Mr. Backen?
There is, Your Worship. The Agricultural Land Commission has ruled that for soil deposit purposes, it's a non-farm use, therefore we have jurisdiction, whereas they've also ruled that the production and growth of cannabis is a farm use, therefore we have no jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on G1 as amended. That carries unanimously. And move on to bylaws for consideration at third reading. H1 is rezoning application number 100564, development variance permit application 100100, bylaw 5479, Amundsen. Have a motion, please. Councillor Davis, seconder. Councillor Richter. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call a question on H1. Carries unanimously. Move on to H2, Official Community Plan Amendment and Rezoning Application Number 100187, Oak Brook Foundation, Bylaw 5486 and 5487. Could I have a motion? Councillor Ferguson moves, second by Councillor Davis. And there's some discussion here. Councillor Richter.
Yes, through you to staff. I have a concern about building a school that's not on city water or municipal water. And of course, this school is outside the water distribution network. How long will it be before it can be put on city water? And do we have a guarantee that it will be put on city water?
Mr. Seffi, if you can answer the city water hookup question.
Thank you, Worship. The requirement, one of the requirements for municipal water, based on the Fraser Health requirements for potability, for it to be appropriate and adequate for domestic purposes, is for the system to be looped. What that means is that there can't be a long dead-end section of a pipe, which makes the extension to this area a significant undertaking with significant costs. That just as background in terms of, I guess, the potential future extension possibilities. And as Council will recall, there have been attempts a number of times by residents in the area to go through a local area servicing process to extend water to this area. We know, based on our discussions with the proponents, that they have no problems and they will agree to make a connection to the municipal water system if and when it is extended. And it's just a matter of either council directing staff to proceed and in collaboration with the local area residents come up with the funding, or just on its own as a municipal initiative to proceed. So that is the sort of in terms of timing, it's a subject of council direction.
So in other words, this could be 20 years, 50 years from now? It's not going to be like within the next 5?
Well, Your Worship, it's not a priority in terms of staff initiatives. So if council believes that this needs to happen quicker, as I said, it's a fairly extensive undertaking. So it will require millions, not hundreds of thousands of dollars to extend. And as such, it will require council direction.
Okay.
Just to add, Your Worship, there's a further complication, however, and that is that many of the public schools in the rural areas are not on piped water as well. It's actually on wells. Those do meet the provisions of the current standards for the rural areas. Correct, Mr. Seffi?
That's correct, Your Worship. This is not in an area that requires extension of municipal water.
Just the caution that the other schools then, from an equitable perspective, may wish to be considered in the same light.
Thank you.
Okay. So one last question. With regards to the water draw of a school, because a school will use more water than the surrounding residential will, do we have or is there a backup plan should the residential area begin to lose water?
Mr. Seffi?
Your Worship, I'm not sure if I would agree with the premise of the question that Councillor Richter is posing in terms of a school drawing more water. Typically, I guess, depends on what the use is. It would certainly draw more water than the existing zone, but if it was to go to a commercial, for example, depending on the type of commercial that council could approve, it is questionable as to which one would have a higher draw. Certainly in terms of firefighting, from a firefighting perspective, it would have a higher demand and a higher need. But in terms of domestic uses, it will be limited to daytime. There will be no showering, for example, other than perhaps some shower for sporting activities or for gym, etc. So it's not like a residential use that will have a continuous demand. So that's just some
I'm
comments.
thinking more of toilet flushing than anything else. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
I think we've had a lot of discussion about this, and water had been requested in the area before. And I think what's missing in this is, and there was, the proponent did put forward that they would be willing to hook up if and when it was available. I don't think we should initiate it for the reasons that Mr. Bakken said, because that we'd do it for all the schools, but I think we should add as a prerequisite in here that if and when, I suppose, it becomes available in the area, that they hook up. So I'll make that amendment to add that to the prerequisites. And I think it was mentioned in their letter. Just trying to find the actual wording.
Your Worship,
Sorry.
there could be
Before
a...
Sorry, I was, the motion is to do what? I missed out, sorry.
Is to add as a prerequisite if and when water is available in the area that the proponent will hook up to it.
Is it there already, Mr. Seppi?
I think it's in. No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and that's moved and seconded. Okay, open that up. Any discussion on that? Yeah, push your button. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm very much in agreement with that. I don't know at what point there will be a local area service survey and to see whether or not there will be municipal water, but at the very least we would have assured ourselves that if we put the language in there that it's crystallized, that when the water becomes available, that they will be hooking up to it. And so I don't know that we need specific language. I think staff can provide that. But it's just to give us more certainty, because there could be conditions that we're unaware of at this point that if it becomes viable and available, they might, or their agents might decide not to hook up to it for some reason. And I don't think that we would want that to happen. So I think it's prudent to do that now.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. This is H2. And carries. Mayor Froese opposed. And back to the main motion is amended. Councillor Woodward.
One of the other major concerns from the public hearing was in regards to the potential use of the traffic using the adjacent private property to access 232nd Street. And rather than me come up with the solution, I had one potential one, but is there an effective, realistic, real-world mechanism to hold the proponent to what they suggested they would do, that they would have policies for pickup and drop-off from parents, and that they would not be doing that, but to have some mechanism to enforce that if they don't follow through on that?
I think we've debated this in other examples, and when it comes to operational, I don't believe we have authority or jurisdiction to dictate operational the operational aspect of a business, or
that's correct, Your Worship.
Yeah, so it makes it very difficult. We can do the other things.
So a mechanism of an additional restrictive covenant wouldn't really be very effective or enforceable. So there really is no mechanism to enforce it.
That's our understanding.
That's our understanding. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I see no further discussion. I'm going to call the question on H2 as amended, which carries unanimously. Move on to H3. This is Heritage Revitalization Agreement, the Perry Evans Resident, Bylaw 5227. Councillor Long moves it. Councillor Davis seconds it. Discussion on H3. Seeing none, I'll call a question on H3. Carries unanimously. Move on to H4. Rezoning application number 100488 and development permit application number 100904. This is Carvelth Developments Limited, Bylaw 5485. Councillor Ferguson moves it, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Discussion on H4. Councillor Richter.
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment that clearing in advance of final, which I believe is listed on page 7, be deleted.
Sorry, clearing
That they be allowed to start clearing that lot right away now that they've got third reading.
Is there a seconder to that?
Second.
Councillor Ferguson seconds it. I'll open the amendment. Discussion on that. So I just have a question for Mr. Seffi then. Is this requirement so that they can are able to take advantage of the summer weather, or why they want to do this prior to fourth reading?
That was the intent, Your Worship, yes.
Okay. No, for that I won't be supporting that. Thank you. Councillor Long?
Yeah, I was thinking this is actually a fairly good thing. I mean, don't forget that the work being done in the appropriate time, when there's nesting not happening, those kinds of things is really a positive. Now, if the development's not going to get passed, well, then I guess they won't be clearing any trees anyway. But if they get third reading, it's just a matter of time, right, between now and final. So why not have the work start sooner?
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
it's quite brave of them to actually spend the money before they get fourth reading.
Thank you. Further discussion on H4 amendment? I'll call a question. This is to amendment to, is to remove that allowance. The amendment fails. Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Coons, Mayor Froese, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Long, Councillor Davis opposed. Back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Councillor Long on?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Councillor Richter on the main motion.
Yes. During the public hearing, the proponent said there was really no need for green roofs because there are no higher buildings around that will look down on the green roof, except that it's in an area zoned to have higher buildings eventually. So I'd like to add that green roofs be included.
Seconder? Councillor Arneson seconds. Open up the amendment on that. Anybody wish to speak to that? Councillor Long?
We all love green roofs. Everyone likes a green roof, but I believe that we have language. Well, we have language in some other plans where possible or be encouraged. I don't know if we can actually mandate a green roof, but maybe staff can comment on, can we somehow encourage it or put wording of that nature in there, because it significantly will change the project for the proponent. But
Mr. Backen, can you provide some assistance to Councillor Long on some wording?
Your Worship, the Carvalth, the enabled plan does encourage green roofs, and it doesn't require it. It's something that is included in the guidelines, so it's something that staff does bring up and have discussion about with proponents. And sometimes it is feasible and sometimes it is not. So if council wishes to make that a requirement, that is something that is completely within council's prerogative.
Thank you.
Is that an amendment, Councillor?
No, there is amendment.
Where required, where possible?
well, it's already there, Councillor Ferguson. So I guess it probably doesn't fit this project.
Thank
There's
you.
a lot of
Councillor Arneson?
Thank you, Worship. Looking at this, I realize that there's going to be a lot of trees that will be lost as a result of the building design, and I know that it's included in our guidelines and that staff does a good job of negotiating with the proponents. Look at that big flat surface. Oh, that would look great. In any event, and I agree that we should be considering this more often. I'm just challenged to think, even though I supported this for just more debate on the subject, that at this point in time, to add that as a condition would be rather onerous because all the other decisions have been made. And I do know that it creates a premium for the builders to put that on there. However, I do think we should be considering having yet another delegation and staff report to talk about green roofs. If we're realistically looking at them and we're putting them forward as an option, then I would really struggle with why aren't we achieving that? You know, what is it that we could do to help to offset some? We were talking tonight about greenhouse gas and carbon offsets. This would be an ideal way to at least address part of that. So I think we ought to be doing that more as part of a discussion.
Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I think last time we had the public input, we were able to get a better understanding of this building and the designs of this building. There's a significant amount of green space that's left as part of the development, and you know, I think it significantly changes the structure of this facility. And so at this stage, certainly, I don't think it's necessary based on all the green space that's left on the property, and I wouldn't support requiring green roofs at this stage.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment to add a green roof. That motion fails with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Coons, Mayor Froese, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Long opposed. And we move back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on H4. And it carries. Councillor Richter opposed. Move to H5. This is rezoning application number 100450 and development permit application numbers 100825 and 101057. Metro Latimer 73 Incorporated. Bylaw 5484. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, second by Councillor Kunst. Discussion on H5. Councillor Richter.
I still think they should be swapped so that more trees could be retained around the school.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on H5. That carries. Councillor Richter opposed. And we move on to H6. Could I have a motion, please?
Your worship, may I just
Yes.
provide some comments on this one?
Yeah, I was going to just get the motion first, and then
Oh, thank you.
I was going to refer to you. Councillor Ferguson, seconder. Councillor Kunst. Mr. Seffi, I know you had some comments on this and perhaps an amendment.
Yes, Your Worship. It is really just a clarification, if you will. Council may recall this application has a longer history than it's typical, in that the application was first brought to Council not the last meeting, but rather in April of this year. As part of the process prior to the application being considered by Council for first and second reading, there have been a lot of submissions and discussions with staff, the proponent, and members of the public, and certainly as part of the Council consideration at time of first and second reading and the public hearing, just to confirm whether or not a requirement for completing 202 A Street fronting the subject site is a requirement of this process or not. And if I could just ask Council to consider making an amendment to clarify the intent, being that the proponent will be required to complete works on 202 A Street by amending prerequisite number 3, which is on Council's agenda, page H6-9, by adding the words 202 A Street right after the words traffic improvements 4, and then adding the words Latimer plan right after the words Yorkshire Naval plan. No, condition number 3.
Okay, Councillor Long moves. Is there a seconder? I have a seconder to the amendment. Councillor Woodward seconds. Open the amendment. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on H6 amendment. Carries unanimously. So we're back to H6 as amended. Any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just want to note 230 trees on this property and only one is going to be retained.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on H6. Carries. Councillor Richter and Councillor Arneson opposed. So now we move on to bylaws for final adoption. I need a drink of water. This is thirsty work.
Oh, yeah.
I1, Subdivision Development Servicing Bylaw, bylaw number 5382. Could I have a motion, please? Motion, Councillor Kuntz, second to Councillor Whitmarsh. Discussion on I1. Seeing none, call the question on I1. Carries with Councillor Arneson opposed. We move on to I2, rezoning application number 100477 and bylaw number 5408. Could I have a motion on the bylaw, please? Councillor Arneson moves, seconder. Have a second. Councillor Woodward, any discussion on the bylaw? Seeing none, call a question on I2. And it carries unanimously. Need a motion on the development permit 100895. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Long. Discussion on the development permit. Seeing none, call the question on the DP. And that carries unanimously. Okay. Yeah. Move on to I3. Okay. All right, I3 is official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 100115 and development. Well, we'll go straight to the bylaws. Bylaw 5444 and 5445. Yeah, we did the development permit has to be done separately. So on the last one. So on the bylaws, on I3, could I have a motion, please? Councillor Long, second by Councillor Woodward. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question on the bylaws. Can you mark Councillor Ferguson absent on this? I forgot to do that. So So okay, just call it. So carries unanimously, but Councillor Ferguson is absent. So now on the development permit, I'm going to mark the attendance here. On development permit 100768, could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Discussion, seeing none, call the question on the development permit. Carries unanimously. Can I ask Councillor Ferguson to come back in, please? All right, we're on to I-4, rezoning application number 100506, and we're going to go to the bylaw, bylaw 5422, Hera Builders Group. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Long, second. Councillor Whitmarsh. Discussion on the bylaw, seeing none. Calling the question on I-4. Carries. Councillor Richter opposed. On the development permit application number 100949, could I have a motion, please? Councillor, I need a motion. Councillor Kuntz, second by Councillor, I need a seconder. Councillor Long. Discussion on the development permit, seeing none. Call the question. Carries with Councillor Richter opposed. Move on to I-5, official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 100146, the bylaw 5398 and 5399. Could I have a motion on the bylaws, please? Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Discussion, Councillor Woodward.
I just had a question through the staff. If we delayed this by one meeting, how much money in community amenity contributions would be owed by Vesta Properties?
I think we can do that, but it's a good.
We'll have to run the numbers, Your Worship. There are, as I recall, in this particular application, there are 6 buildings, 2 residential, I believe 2 mixed use, and 2 office buildings. So the community amenity contributions will be applicable to residential buildings only. I don't recall the number of units, Mr. Knoll, do you?
So we can just maybe summarize it as lots of money?
Lots of money is good.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Richter?
Councillor Woodward raises a good point, but legally can we do it, Mr. Backen?
Right.
Through the mayor.
Mr. Backen.
Not for the purpose of raising revenue, but to be balanced. It should also, you make my job difficult sometimes. But the other point, though, is there's actually 2 other phases yet to come, phases 5 and 7, which will be subject to the new fee regiment.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question on the bylaws. Carries. Councillor Richter is opposed. And development permit application number 10889. Could I have a motion on the development permit, please? Councillor Kunst, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Discussion on the DP. Seeing none, call the question on I-5. Carries with Councillor Richter and Councillor Arneson opposed. It's like the never-ending agenda. I-6, rezoning application number 100529 and development. I'll go to the bylaws. Bylaw 5454. Could I have a motion on the bylaw, please? Councillor Long, seconder. I have a seconder. Councillor Woodward. Discussion on I-6. Seeing none, call the question on the bylaw. Carries unanimously. The development permit has been moved by Councillor Long, seconder. Councillor Kuntz. Discussion on the development permit. Seeing none, I'll call the question on I-6. Carries unanimously. And that takes us to the end of our meeting because we moved everything else up. So, motion to terminate. Termination. It's just to wake everybody up. Councillor Davis moves. Termination. Seconder. Councillor Whitmarsh. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll take a 5-minute break or so, and then we'll move into the public hearing.